Hello and welcome to this edition of Standard Deviation, my column and video series. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan and I'm going to be speaking to you about how consumers across India are seeing their income levels remain the same or even decrease while their expenditure rises. And what this means is that more and more Indians are falling into debt, including credit card debt. Now let's assume that the Indian economy is a car. It has 4 wheels and an engine. So far, it's safe to say that 3 wheels are already wobbling. The private investment wheel has been underperforming for a while now. Over the last year or so, the export and import wheels have also slowed significantly thanks to the world economy. The final wheel, which is household consumption, is now also starting to wobble, and I'll show you how a little later in the video. But what happens when all the wheels of a car either start wobbling or start slowing down at different speeds? The car, which in this case is the Indian economy, risks crashing and the engine stands to overheat. The engine in this case is government spending. It's the only thing that is keeping the economy still running. But the government has already been shouldering the burden of investment for a while now, because the private sector is not stepping up. Now it will also have to increase spending on subsidies to ease the distress of consumers. Such steps have already started, with the central government and various state governments already having announced freebies to help people reduce their spending. The problem is, these are the fixes that populist politicians can think of, not solutions coming from expert policymakers. While governments and parties view the issue through the political lens of gaining votes, they are missing the policy imperative of averting an economic crisis. Incidentally, this kind of crisis of poor private investment and low consumer spending will likely bring us full circle to what kicked off the Indian government's socialist push in the 1950s. Now, let's get to the signs that consumer spending is starting to wobble. The emerging problem with household consumption has to do with how it is being financed, which reveals a lot about what's happening with India's consumers. Credit card debt is increasing sharply, largely because people are spending well beyond their means. RBI data shows that credit card dues rose 31% in July of this year compared to their level in July last year. This in itself won't be a problem. Spending money on your credit card is not a bad thing, and a lot of people do it for credit card points and rewards. However, if you combine this increase in credit card spending with another data set from the RBI, the scope of the problem emerges. The central bank's Consumer Confidence Survey for July 2023 shows that a whopping 85% of the respondents said that their spending on essential items has grown over the last year. Now, one can argue that prices tend to increase over time. In fact, they should rise in a growing economy since growth and inflation go hand in hand. But when it comes to a survey, people report changes only if they are out of the ordinary. So if 85% of the people are saying that their spending on essentials has increased, it's because this spike has been significant enough to pinch. Another 12% of the respondents said that their spending on essentials remained the same as last year. Now, we know that inflation has been at a pretty brisk pace over the last year. So it's likely that these people have been buying lower quantities of essentials, which is a sure sign of economic distress. On non-essentials, a little more than a quarter of the respondents said that their spending had increased, while about 37% said it had remained the same. To put it simply, most people saw their essential spending increase, many saw their non-essential spending increase, and yet others saw their non-essential spending remain the same. Now, contrast this with the fact that only a quarter of the respondents said that their incomes actually rose over the last year. In other words, about 50% reported no change in their incomes, and a quarter said that their incomes had actually decreased. So, you have a situation where most people are spending more, especially on essentials, but earning either the same or less. No wonder they're increasingly turning to credit cards and buy now, pay later schemes. Now, if the results of a survey, even if it is conducted by the RBI, aren't convincing enough, Then look at the household savings rate. After all, if households are doing well, they'd be saving more money, right? The household savings rate, however, has been pretty low, except for a surge during 2020-21 because of the forced savings due to the lockdown. Further, the broad trend of household savings over the last decade has been of decline. Still not convinced. How about expenditure on items that people don't usually use credit cards for, such as cars and two-wheelers? If household incomes are doing okay, then sales for these items should be robust. But that's not the case. After 2 years of contraction in 2020 and 2021, two-wheeler sales finally shot up by about 17% in 2022-23. But this has dramatically slowed down once again, with care ratings saying 2023-24 will end with just 6 to 8% growth in this category. Passenger vehicles have done better, but all evidence points to the fact that sales are being driven by premium variants and SUVs, not the vehicle of choice for the Aam Aadmi. It's clear that governments and political parties understand the problem at hand, that most Indian consumers are barely hanging on. But the problem is that they're viewing it as a political issue rather than a policy one. So, you have LPG subsidies from the center being given to all families and not just the Ujjwala Yojana ones, as was the case earlier. Free food schemes continue long after they should have been ended. The Congress is making good on its pre-election promises in Karnataka, all of which are doles and freebies of one kind or the other. And Sonia Gandhi has promised more of the same in Telangana. Unfortunately, what's missing is an acknowledgement of the problem at the center or even at the state levels and a plan to solve it. This is what happens when politics so comprehensively overshadows policy. On that note, that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching.